Welcome home, Raiders. As you know, Antorus, the Burning Throne, has landed upon Azeroth. So we are going to actually take a little bit of an in-depth look in this very special report. I do like that music. To talk to us about the Antorus, the Burning Throne, I thought we would bring in somebody new. And there's been some videos happening lately that I've really enjoyed, and I just kind of wanted to bring her on. It's Hazel from Hazel Nutty Games. Hello, Hazel.
Hi, Pat. I almost greeted myself. I was about to say hi, Hazel, and that would have been very silly. So I'm glad I caught myself there.
That's all right. Well, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you on. And I just kind of want to introduce people to you and what you do. You've been doing WoW videos for quite some time, but have kind of jumped into guides fairly recently, anyway?
Well, I've been doing WoW guides for a while. I've been doing pet guides primarily for the last couple of years, but starting in about that raid that had Helia in it. Name just escapes me, but you went down some stairs.
Right.
The raid down the stairs, I did a couple of guides for that, and I've been making raid guides for a bit, but I've always done them with footage from my guild. So after the fact, so they always came out 2 to 3 weeks after the raid was out, and by then nobody needs them. So this past year is the first time I've actually gotten onto the PTR and done the very, very scary thing, for me at least, of pugging these raids on the PTR and doing them without any add-ons and getting footage that way so that I can make these guides ahead of time, and it's been working really well.
Good. That's awesome. And so now you've created the new one for Antorus, and it is decidedly different from all of the other boss guides out there in one way. In one specific way. In that
what did I do?
In that you're doing it. And it's super positive and friendly and just kind of awesome. Was this did you kind of look at the other boss guides and say, hey, I want to do something different?
Well, kind of. I very, very vividly remember my very first time raiding. It was in Cataclysm, and I had just gotten into a guild that was going to be raiding Firelands. And it was just normal, but I was fairly new to the game, and I was terrified. It's so scary getting into a new group of people and wanting to fit in, wanting them to like you, and knowing that very much rides on how well you're going to perform in this fight that you have never seen before.
Sure.
It's just a very scary thing. So at the time, I went and I watched every single video for Staghelm, I think it was, that I could find, and tried to memorize everything. And I remember every time since then that I've gone through and looked at raid guides, it's always been very helpful, and I'm very grateful to the guide making community. I've used a lot of Fat Boss guides in the past, and I like those quite a bit. But the thing that I really wanted was something that was a little bit shorter, because sometimes I left it to the last minute. Okay. And I also wanted something that really clearly highlighted the individual mechanics that they were talking about so that I could pick it out of the noise, as it were. So that's something that I've been trying to keep in mind when I make my own videos. Gotcha.
So now, was this the first time that you were really going on the PTR and doing all of the behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, very first time PTR raid testing. Of course, anybody can do it. It is the very public test run. You don't need an invite. You don't need anything special like that. But it was a little scary because, again, it's raiding in a fight that you've never seen before with a group of people. The pressure is a little bit lower because nobody's seen the fights before, but there's still a little bit of toxicity out there. Yeah. And then the other thing that made that a little bit of a big leap for me was on the PTR, I ended up having to heal for almost every single fight, because healers are very needed on the PTR. Nobody wants to log in the PTR and heal a fight they've never done.
It's tough.
And that was the best way for me to get into groups. And I don't actually heal on live. I haven't healed on live in 3 expansions. I am a Shadow Priest exclusively. So getting on there and playing Holy with no add-ons and without mouse over macros and with people that I didn't know was a bit of a trip, but it was really fun, and it was eventually very worth it. Gotcha. I'm definitely planning on doing that again.
I always like seeing the videos from the PTR because it shows you every single way that you can possibly die.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, that's kind of. I mean, how many times through do you have to go to complete some of these fights? I mean, how many different wipes do you go through?
It really depends on how many pulls the group has time for, because each of these bosses is only available for an hour. And there were 2 rounds of testing that I participated in. So you get an hour on a boss back in September, and then you got another hour on it in August, and flip those around because that's not how the calendar works. But You get to do it 2 times, and you get an hour at each time. But for some of the fights, like we couldn't get enough tanks or we couldn't get enough healers because this was very much a pug group. It wasn't a guild group or anything like that. So for some of them, you only had like 30 or 40 minutes. And if somebody can't figure out how to get in or doesn't know how to do something, it can take a long time to get started. And maybe you only get like 5 or 6 pulls. For most of these fights, I ended up having in complete footage about 5 to 8 pulls worth of video to work with. So that's about how many times you get to do it, depending on how quickly you're wiping.
Sure.
King Garoth in particular, the Ruiner, ruined the pug consistently for probably the first half of testing. The graphic was a little bit sketchy on the PTR, but there was still definitely some standing in the beam, including myself.
Man,
that's what that healer legendary is for. That cloak, the Holy Priest cloak that picks you back up, that was my best friend.
Nice. Well, I do want to, I did jump in yesterday on live just to go through some of the normal stuff and check it all out and all that kind of stuff. Do you have a particular, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the raid kind of in general, right? As far as, this is not Tomb of Sargeras. This is not Tomb of Soakgeras, where we're going to be soaking everything, and that's like the main mechanic throughout the entire raid. I was seeing a lot of variety here, right?
Yep. I would absolutely agree with that.
What were some of the cool things that you saw? Some of the cool mechanics that you thought were just really fun for this raid?
I really like the fights that allow you to use CC mechanics. So Covenant Shavara on the Norganon thing. ANR, of course, when you're CCing the ads. And then again on Agrimar when you're trying to stop the flame ads or at least slow their progress. I really like that we actually have a reason to get all those abilities out and keybind them. And there's also some sort of fun improv-y kind of moments where the fight might play out differently depending on how people use them. You might be on Covenant Shavara and, the dudes are marching towards you. And you get through and you get behind them, and then a Boomkin fat fingers their Typhoon, and they just push them back into the raid, and then, we don't like that guy anymore. So there's lots of room for variety with mechanics like that.
Right. And did you have like because we're kind of moving throughout this entire area, and we're seeing a lot of different places along the way as well. Like ANR was an amazing space. Right. Yes. Just the environment was super cool. Looked very much, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just very, very open and airy. And yet you have to go and fight all these dudes. Were there particular locations in the raid that you particularly liked?
I like the way ANR, of course, as you said, I really like that they've decided to make use of this whole Legion's kind of homeworld, and it's their portal hub almost, so that we can go to all these different places because all the portals are already there. So the ANR room was very beautiful for that. But I also really liked the way they had the Covenant Shavara set up over top of Varimathras, because not only do you have this cool thing where you can go to the Coven and literally drop down to get into the Varimathras room, but while you're fighting Varimathras, you're actually getting voice lines from the Coven up above, and you can kind of get the feel for why he's down here, what they've been doing. Yeah. And it feels very much like a real place and not so much just like a level in a 2D video game.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice that not everything is green. Especially
there's a lot of green and there's a lot of dark colors.
There's a lot
I'm
of like
still
green.
Be glad to get out of there.
There's a lot of green spell effects and stuff like that, but it's not like the entire environment is green. It's not like Emerald Nightmare was all green, and even Tomb there was a lot of green going on. And
ever since Hellfire Citadel, we've been kind of in a bit of a demon run. I think we're going to be glad to just be done with.
I know. I'm so looking forward to this. This is actually what I said to a bunch of the guys on Tuesday. So it's been kind of interesting to go through some of these environments where you're seeing, I don't know, multiple colors. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some of these bosses and kind of the path that people will take. You start out with Garathi Worldbreaker, which is a lot of garbage on the ground, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then
it's a choose your own path kind of garbage, though. You can decide what kind of garbage you as a guild personally hates more. Nice. I like decisions.
Right. It's kind of either or. Do we want to kill this one first or this one first? And then from there we move on to Fellhounds, which is kind of a fun fight. I mean, it's
awesome.
I don't know. I mean, for like a beginning fight, it's kind of nice because you just kind of spread out and do your thing, and the healers complain about how far apart the bosses are.
Fellhounds is going to get significantly more fun or annoying depending on what kind of a raider you are once we get into heroic, because you're going to start getting a lot of overlap of like the purple dog wants you to stack up and then the red dog wants you to spread out. And you're going to get a lot of both of that happening at once. So you're going to have people trying to stack on people that need to be spread, kind of like a Xavia's thing at the end of Darkheart Thicket. You're just going to be ruining your friends' lives. And that's my favorite part of raiding.
Right on. And then from there, we have kind of choices in where we can go, right?
Yes, that's true.
So the next, what is it? The next like 3 or 4, we can actually choose where we want to go, and then we have to come back and what's the next selection point? I can't remember.
I'm actually pulling up my infographic because I don't remember. Despite having made all these guides, a couple of them were made quite a while ago, and I actually had my first night in the raid last night, like on live, and
you're doing it kind of out of order too when you're on the PTR. So you're just kind of jumping into the actual boss fight. You're not going through all the trash and stuff, right?
That's true. The trash was all very new. So from the infographic, you start with Worldbreaker, and then you can go to any of the 4 Fellhounds, Command, Hazabel, or Eonar, or Eonar, as Magni likes to say. And then from there, it's a very linear progression after that.
Gotcha. So it's pretty cool. And I haven't fought Very Mathras or the rest of the guys after that yet.
Yep.
That's tonight. It's
gonna be a good night. It wasn't too tough. Something that I actually want to ask your opinion about. Do you feel like after your first night in the raid, do you feel like it was undertuned?
For normals, I thought it was probably a little bit undertuned. Just a little bit. I mean, there were some where we wiped on, but it wasn't like a big problem. But then again, the group that I'm going with, they're used to doing heroics. So we kind of finished with, item level 930, 935, somewhere in there. And so for this group in particular, it's not terrible. But I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how heroics are. What did you see on the PTR? And what did you see last night?
Okay, so on the PTR, and I'm fairly certain, it's my first time on the PTR, but I'm fairly certain this is intentional. They overtune the fights intentionally,
sure,
so that you don't kill them, because they want you to see all the mechanics and have to do them. They don't want you just clearing the boss and being like, well, we can't test this anymore. So it's going to be vastly, vastly easier once you get onto live, and especially because of course you're going to have add-ons, which you can have on the PTR, but that's dangerous. But you're going to have add-ons in live, and you're going to have your guild. And we're also a heroic raiding guild, so we had the same kind of item level. A lot of our raiders took a very long break, so some of them didn't necessarily have the Netherlight Crucible traits unlocked, but for the most part, we're fairly set up.
Sure.
And I thought it felt very, very easy. And again, we're a heroic guild, so it's going to be really telling tonight once we start clearing through heroic and seeing how quickly we go through that. But typically on our normal clear usually takes us the first week, because there's usually a fight or two that has mechanics that we need to actually learn how to do. And maybe they all just watched my guides and they were really good at the mechanics, but I doubt it. I doubt it. And I think that it could have maybe been tuned a little bit more. We're going to see when we get to heroic, but the word that I've been hearing from my kind of circle of friends, especially people that have done heroic already, is that it is a little bit easy, and that people are a little tiny bit concerned that, this is the last raid of the expansion. It's the last major raid of the expansion, and Battle for Azeroth is somewhere in the future, and we don't have a beta yet, and we might be in Antorus the Burning Throne for a while. So if we're just going to shoot right through it, that could cause another kind of end of expansion situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was the consensus of my team last night, was that boy, I have a really bad feeling like heroic is going to be impossible. Just like it should be. It should be kind of impossible, because you want to actually go through normals and clear and get gear and get your new tier set and all that kind of stuff, and start pressing into heroic, not necessarily clearing it all the way, because after you clear it all the way, it's the end of the expansion.
Then, yeah. Our guild has a new rule where after we have fully cleared heroic, we set a number of times to do it, usually between 4 and 10 if we're feeling really, really gung-ho about it. And then once we've done the full clear for like a month or so, we just take a break until the next raid comes out. Wow. We've lost raiders in the past to having burnout from just continuing after nobody needs anything anymore, and they'd rather just let everybody go off and play, Destiny or Animal Crossing Pocket Camp or whatever it is that they're going to do, and then come back when there's new content.
Right on. And that's kind of the healthy way to do it. And I think that as long as you say, hey, we're going to do a game night or something like that, then that way you can kind of keep your community together and all that kind of stuff as well. And that usually works out for most people. So I don't know. And at the end of expansion stuff, I mean, it's not like we need gear at that point because we're at the end.
No.
I don't know.
We're at the end, and it's especially uninspiring to get gear this time around because there is going to be another item level squish.
Right.
So you know that it's going to be garbage once the next expansion comes out. It's not even a matter of if I get really good raid gear, it's going to last me a minute. It might, but your odds aren't good.
Right. Well, yeah. I hear you. I gotcha. Have you checked out Mythic at all? I mean, like the mechanics or anything like that? I mean, I don't know what was shown on the PTR.
I didn't do the Mythic testing, and I looked through the Dungeon Journal a little bit, but I have actually never in my life, not once, raided Mythic. I'm just not a Mythic raider. I could be, I'm sure, if I took the time and I practiced and I had a Mythic guild and we raided for more than like 4 hours a week. Mm-hmm. But I really like WoW raiding as the way I'm set up right now, where it's kind of a couple nights, it's very casual, it's laid back. A couple people are drinking and nobody minds. Right. And it's not such a serious environment. We don't get stuck for super long amounts of time. We're just all kind of happy to take it easy a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not too up on the
fun stuff. and it's like the hardcore casual folks, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. Anything else about the raid in particular that you wanted to bring up? I know that I don't necessarily want to bring up strats or anything like that because you've already taken care of that. But is there anything that was really cool that you saw on live or in PTR, or anything that you noticed that you think that more people would benefit from or like?
I don't know if it's a benefit, but something that occurred to me that I thought was kind of funny when I was doing the raid last night is we zone into the A&R room and everybody has that moment, and this happened in the PTR too, where everybody just goes, wow, this room is beautiful. And we start learning the fight and doing the fight, and everybody goes, man, this fight's really cool. And they haven't done something like this before. It's very neat to see tower defense in an MMO game. I think they've executed it really well. And I'm thinking everybody loves this. And I'm just thinking forward to like 2 expansions later when somebody just wants that last piece of transmog off her, they're going to hate it.
Right.
It's going to be one of those fights that's it's very much on a timer. You can't, it's a Battle for Hyjal style thing where you cannot speed it up no matter how much gear you have. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be one of the ones that's going to be remembered very fondly now. And then 2 expansions from now, everybody's going to swear that they never liked it. Ready.
Right. It's definitely one of those things where it will be a Hyjal run, and it does definitely feel like that already after just one night. But the room is really cool, and the fact that you can fly around is super cool. And I don't know. I think it's just going to be one of those rooms that you go around and you screw around in, and you're like, all right, fine, I'll just fly around. Yeah, the flying thing does definitely make it a lot better. Some people in my event were kind of wondering whether or not they initially had the fight in like early concept without the flying button, and we're just like, man, this is just a treadmill. We got to give them something. So they give us this really good extra action button. Then of course all the launch pads makes it a lot more fun. So I think that'll be something. One thing that I do wish that they had, and this is just unreasonable, but I wish that they had let us in that fight. If you have knockbacks, I really wish you could knock back the demons off of a higher platform, either out of the arena or even onto a lower platform if they took falling damage. I think that would be fair. Wow. I think that would be cool. But that would be neat. Nope, they're not going to do that. I think
it would give some neat opportunities in Mythic, especially if there were more waves or different waves, if you could like micromanage waves by moving them onto different platforms to make it like a shorter run for a different group, something like that. Mm-hmm. But next time.
Now, that kind of brings up an interesting question. Did you spy anything that is a potential problem for raiders in any of the fights? I mean, you're talking about the knockback stuff. You kind of wish that was there. Was there anything that you wished that they had done with some of these other fights?
It's hard to say without having done it on live on Heroic yet.
Sure.
I think that Veramathras on Heroic is going to be a bit of a struggle for some people, my guild in particular, because you have this mechanic, the Necrotic Embrace, where you have to get out or you're going to plague everybody. But if you go out by your own, you're done. You need to have a plague buddy, or you need to have an immunity. And if you have a plague buddy, your plague buddy needs to have an immunity. It's a lot of planning and coordination that's going to have to happen on the fly. Right. And if you're a guild that raids, like if you're a pug, you're just, that's going to be rough. That's going to be a rough one for pugs. Like you might just end up having to have you can't even just out heal the debuff because, of course, the Necrotic Plague gives you shadow damage, which makes you immune to healing. Varimathras is a very unforgiving fight as far as being able to overheal mechanics because the mechanics literally prevent healing. I think that's going to be a bit of maybe not a pug killer, but let's not pug this one this week. I don't feel like it kind of thing.
I just like the term plague buddy. I mean,
yeah.
You don't hear that very often.
Mm-hmm. If you're going to get the plague, you may as well have a friend.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree. So now, where can people find your strats for Antorus?
On my YouTube page.
And where is that?
youtube.com/hazelnuttygames.
Hazelnutty Games. And there are all sorts of other videos on there, all about WoW and other games. And
pretty much just WoW. Hazelnutty Games is a bit of a misnomer. There were other games many years ago, but it's been a long time.
Right.
It's really just WoW.
I saw some of your old videos, and you start out in this beige box, and
a beige box,
and well, just the room, right? And now you've got the full set going. You've got all of your Murloc
still beige.
friends.
I've just covered it with stuff to try and hide the beige. It's actually awful. Even my blackout curtains are beige. The carpet's beige. The walls are beige. I want to move. I want to move into a place I can paint. It's terrible, but yeah.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, you've made it a lot more colorful area for everybody to look at, and you have definitely created a fun environment for people to discover this raid and kind of walk through it and learn more about it. So for that, I thank you, and thank you very much for coming on here for this special report. And this kind of gives everybody a glimpse into Antorus before you step in, or as you step in, as we step in on live together. So it's
thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And how would you put Antorus in this expansion? I mean, where would you put Antorus as far as, like, if you had to pick your favorite raid? Where would Antorus fit in?
It's hard to say until I do a little bit more of it.
Sure.
I really liked Nighthold. I thought Nighthold was awesome. I actually had a great time throughout that raid. And of course, your impression of a raid is going to be very much influenced by how active you were during that patch. I mean, if you were just logging into raid, you're not going to have as good of a time, even if it's a better raid, than if you were doing all the Mythic Plus and getting your best in slot trinkets and whatever.
Right.
But I thought Nighthold was really cool. I think Antorus could be a contender to dethrone it, depending on how easily my guild clears through it, but I think I have some good hopes for it. We have a lot of raiders back, which is really fun. This is just such a great time of year, especially for my guild, because we take such big breaks. Whenever the raid comes back, it's kind of like a little family reunion. It feels like seeing all of your friends at school, back in the old days. And you see, like, who's got a new haircut, who's got a new transmog, who's broken up with who, like, what's the new drama, just like kind of catching up with everybody is always a very special time.
All right. Well, once again, Hazel from Hazelnutty Games, thank you so much for joining me today. And check it out. Antorus is live. Let's go, guys. Let's raid.